A 12-year-old boy in a white hat sits down and lets a worried princess cut his hair. And when the hat comes off, a long golden mane spills out that almost nobody in OO has ever seen. I love that the very first secret Adventure Time ever tells you is hidden right there in plain sight, on top of the hero's own head. So that is what we are doing tonight, over the next 2 hours. Pulling back the hats and the crowns and the candy-colored surfaces of OO, one quiet reveal at a time, to find the people underneath. If these slow, late-night deep dives are your kind of thing, a gentle little subscribe helps more of them find you while you drift off. So settle in, get comfortable, let your eyes go soft. Welcome to Pine Hat. And let us start with that boy and his hat and the hair he kept hidden. So let's start where the show itself started keeping secrets. On top of a 12-year-old's head. Go back to that haircut. Finn is sitting still, which is rare for him, and the princess is leaning in close with a worried little crease on her face. And his hat is off. Not the way it usually comes off, in a tussle or a tumble. This time, he just hands it over, the way you hand someone your guard, and the hair comes loose. A long blonde mane that pours down past his shoulders. Gold against all that candy pink, hair almost nobody in OO has ever laid eyes on. He keeps it tucked away under that white hood like it's a thing to be managed, a thing the world doesn't get to see. And I think that's the moment to sit with for a second, because it's the first real secret the show ever tells you about its own hero. The boy you've been following, the one who looks like the simplest character in the whole place, the brave kid with the sword, has been hiding something this entire time. Right there, on top of his head. So that's what we're doing for the next couple of hours. Lights low, sound soft, no rush anywhere. We're going to walk slowly through the people of OO and the secrets they keep, one at a time, and we're going to let each one breathe before we move on. This isn't a quiz, and it isn't a textbook. It's more like sitting up too late with a friend who can't stop noticing the same thing over and over in a show you both love. And the thing they keep noticing is this. Almost everyone here is hiding something underneath. A hat, a crown, a candy shell, a whole language that nobody else in the room can speak. The surface of this world is so bright and so sweet that it took me a long time to see how much of it is built to cover something up. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Read this way, that little haircut episode is almost a thesis statement in miniature. It came early, in Season 2, an episode called To Cut a Woman's Hair. And on paper, it's a small thing, a story about hair. But the show puts its hero down, takes the hat off, and shows you that even he has an interior he keeps private, a part of himself the world doesn't get to touch. And then the series spends 10 whole seasons, 283 episodes from 2010 all the way to 2018. Doing that exact move to everyone else. Pulling hats off, lifting crowns, peeling back the sweetness to find the sad, soft, complicated person underneath. Pendleton Ward built a candy kingdom and then spent a decade quietly proving that nobody in it is only what they appear to be. The hair was just the first one, the first hat lifted, the first quiet little admission that there's always more under there. And here's a small thing I love about that same episode, because the show can't help itself. While Finn's secret is spilling out, the show drops another one right next to it. Almost casual. Princess Bubblegum's hair, that gorgeous pink wave, isn't hair at all. It's literally made of bubblegum. Finn even ends up with a clump of it. So in one quiet little story about a haircut, you get two reveals stacked on top of each other. The hero hides what he really looks like, and the princess is, in the most literal way you can imagine, made of candy. Sweetness as a surface. A person you have to look underneath to actually know. The whole show, right there, in a scene about scissors. So that's the loop I want you to hold on to while we drift through the rest of this. Underneath, keep that word somewhere soft in the back of your mind, because almost every character we're going to sit with tonight has an underneath, and the gentlest, sweetest, happiest looking ones tend to be hiding the heaviest things. I'm not going to spoil any of it now, that's not the kind of night this is, but I'll plant 3 little seeds, quietly, and we'll come back and dig each one up when it's time. There's a name that was a secret for years. Something true about our hero that the show held back far longer than you'd expect. There's an old man in a snowy mountain who is much more frightening and much sadder than he first appears. And there's a teddy bear, a small worn child's toy, that somehow ends up being one of the most heartbreaking objects in the entire series. A name, an old man, a teddy bear. 3 hats, in a sense, all waiting to be lifted. We'll get to every one of them. Let me stay with the hero a moment longer though, because he's where the pattern begins. Finn the human. The central figure of the whole thing, the boy with the sword and the backpack and that endless, almost painful eagerness to do the right thing. And the show tells you what he is right in his name. He's human. A human boy living in a world that is otherwise made of magic and candy and talking animals and creatures that should not by any normal logic exist. He's the one ordinary thing in an extraordinary place, and that already makes him a kind of mystery. Because where did he come from? And why is he the only one? And what does it mean to be the last little scrap of something in a world that's moved on without you? The show is in no hurry to answer any of that. It just lets him be a kid for a long while, swinging that sword, hiding that hair. But even his name, the simplest fact about him, turns out to be carrying more than it lets on. That's a thread for later. I just want you to feel it sitting there. And while we're planting seeds, let me set down those other two as gently as I can. So they're waiting for us when the night gets quieter. Somewhere out past the worn part of the map, there's a scary old man with a long blue beard and a crown. The kind of figure a show like this would normally just use as a punchline or a problem to be solved. But the show implies again and again, in little glances and stray details, that he wasn't always like that, that somewhere underneath all the shouting and the snow, there used to be someone gentle. We'll get there, slowly, I promise. And then there's the bear, an ancient creature, someone who has been alive for a very, very long time, far longer than any person should be, who keeps a child's teddy bear close, the way you keep the last piece of someone you lost. Why a creature that old would hold on to something that small, that soft, that breakable, is one of the most quietly devastating questions the show ever asks. Not tonight, though. Tonight we just lay it down and let it wait. Because that's the deal I want to make with you for the next 2 hours. We go slow. Nothing gets dumped on you all at once. One hat at a time, one quiet reveal at a time, with plenty of space in between to just breathe and let it settle. Framing the whole place this way, as a world of hidden interiors, isn't only a nice idea. What it does, I think, is let you read every later reveal as part of one single pattern, instead of a pile of disconnected trivia, so that when the sad parts come, and they will come, they don't feel like surprises. They feel like the world finally letting you see what was under there the whole time. And the very next layer is the one closest to that boy and his hidden hair, because before we can talk about who Finn became, we have to talk about Finn and Jake, the brothers, and the bodies they were born from. Once you know the hero is hiding his hair under that hat, you start to wonder what else he's tucked away, and the answer goes a lot deeper than a haircut. It goes all the way down to where he came from. Because here's the thing about Finn that the show takes its sweet time admitting out loud. For years, he's just Finn the human. That's the whole label. The last human, the brave kid with the sword and the grass green backpack, the one who says he's gonna help everybody no matter what. And for a long stretch of the series, you don't even know his last name. He doesn't seem to know it either. He's a first name and a job description and a hat, and that's allowed to be enough, until very quietly it isn't. The full name is Finn Mertens. And what gets me is how long it takes to land on screen. It doesn't show up in the first episode, or the first season, or anywhere near the early run when you'd expect a hero to get properly introduced. It arrives in season 6, in an episode called Dentist, in late 2014, which by Adventure Time math is ages into the story. Think about that. You've spent years with this character. You've watched him fall in love and get his heart broken and lose an arm and grow up in front of you. And only then, almost offhandedly, does the show go, oh, right, his name is Finn Mertens. It's the kind of reveal that lands like a footnote and hits like a brick once it sinks in, because a surname is a family. A surname is a thread back to people. And Finn carrying one he never knew tells you he came from somewhere, from someone long before Ooh got hold of him. So let's sit with where he actually came from, or rather, where he didn't. Finn was found abandoned as a baby, just left out there in a strange, broken world, an infant with no one. And the people who picked him up, who decided this tiny crying human was theirs now, weren't human at all. They were dogs. Anthropomorphic dogs named Joshua and Margaret. They took him in and raised him as their own, and they already had a son, a little stretchy golden pup named Jake. And that's the family. That's the unit at the center of this whole show. A human boy and a magic dog, raised side by side as brothers by two dog parents who looked at an abandoned baby of a completely different species and just decided, without any fuss, that love was the only paperwork that mattered. And read this way, that's the show quietly making an argument. Because brother is the word Finn and Jake use for each other constantly, and it's never once treated as a technicality. They're not blood. They're not the same species. By any biological measure, they shouldn't even be the same kind of creature. And Adventure Time never, not for a single second, treats that as a deficiency or an asterisk. Brother is a chosen word here, a load-bearing one. It's the word that holds the entire emotional structure of the series up. What this suggests, if you let it, is that the show thinks family is something you build and keep choosing, not something you're issued at birth. Two boys who decided to be brothers and a story that takes them completely at their word. But then, Then there's how Jake actually got here, and this is where I have to slow down, because the first time you really hear it laid out, you sort of blink. Jake wasn't born the way you'd assume. Jake was born from his father's head, from Joshua's head. There's a backstory revealed in an episode called Joshua and Margaret Investigations in the summer of 2014, where Joshua gets bitten by a shape-shifting creature named Warren Ampersand. The bite leaves a pustule on Joshua's head, and out of that pustule, eventually, comes Jake. That's the origin. That's where the most beloved, most huggable, most chill character in the whole series comes from. A bite and a swelling on his dad's head. And it's also, conveniently, where Jake's whole shape-shifting deal comes from. The stretchiness, the way he can turn himself into a staircase or a tugboat or a giant fist, all of it traces back to that one strange bite from that one strange creature. And I love that, genuinely, because it's the show's entire personality folded into one little piece of lore. Hang with me here for a second, because if these are the corners of Adventure Time you find yourself thinking about at 2 in the morning, the secret births and the quiet, sad threads under the candy, you might feel right at home around here. And I'd love to have you along for the rest of it. Okay, back to it. Read it this way. Jake's birth is grotesque and goofy and just a little melancholy all at the same time. And that mix is exactly the trick the show pulls over and over. It takes something that's genuinely strange, something with a real undertow of sadness and body horror weirdness to it, and it wraps the whole thing in a joke, so it slides down easy. You laugh at the pustule. You go, ha, born from a head. Classic Adventure Time. And only later, if at all, do you notice that underneath the gag is a story about where a body even comes from. About a father carrying something foreign in him that turned into a son. The joke is the sugarcoating. The strangeness is the pill. The show does this with time, too, not just bodies. Take Jake's age. At the start of the series, Jake is older than he looks, his age counted in magical dog years. And that little qualifier, magical dog years, gets dropped into a line, and then the show just keeps walking like it didn't just casually hand you a riddle. Because what does that mean exactly? How do magical dog years map onto human years? How old is Jake, really, standing next to a kid like Finn? And the honest answer is, the show never fully pins it down. Fans have gone back and forth on the math for years trying to work out the conversion, and nothing in the canon ever really nails it shut. It stays fuzzy on purpose. It's a throwaway line that's secretly a whole question about how differently these two brothers might be moving through their lives. One of them a human kid growing up year by year, the other something else entirely, aging on a clock nobody's ever quite read. That's such an Adventure Time move, burying the weird stuff in the offhand line, the aside you almost skate right past. Magical dog years. 5 words and then onward to the next adventure. You could watch the whole show and never stop to ask what that actually implies. And the series is totally fine with that. It doesn't underline it. It doesn't sit you down. It just leaves it there glittering quietly for whoever happens to notice. And here's where I want to leave a thread hanging, the same way the show does, because we are nowhere near done with the question of where Finn came from. We've got the surname now, Mertens. We've got the dog family who raised him, Joshua and Margaret, and the brother who loves him. But a surname implies parents Finn never grew up with, doesn't it? There are 2 figures out there in the larger story, a father named Martin and a mother named Minerva, the people Finn actually came from before he was ever found and taken in. And I'm not going to crack all of that open right now, because their story deserves its own space, and it's tangled and it hurts in ways that need room to breathe. For now, just hold on to the shape of it. The abandoned baby grew up not knowing his own name, and somewhere out there were the people who gave it to him. Whether the show always planned for Finn to learn that name specifically from his father, whether Martin Mertens was always the intended source of that reveal, is honestly speculative. Nothing official really confirms how early that thread was mapped out. But the thread is there, dangling, waiting. What I keep coming back to though with Finn and Jake is how tender it all stays under the strangeness. Strip away the pustule and the dog years and the surname that took 6 seasons to surface, and what you've got is 2 brothers who love each other completely. One found, one born from a head, neither one arriving the ordinary way. Both of them held inside a family that never asked them to be anything other than what they are. The secrets underneath these 2 aren't dark secrets, not really. They're secrets about origins, about where bodies come from and where families come from, and how the people we end up calling brother sometimes get to us by the strangest possible roads. Finn's a human raised by dogs. Jake's a magic creature grown out of a bite. And the show just lets both of those facts sit there, gentle and matter of fact. Like, of course, why would that be a problem? But not every secret in OO is this gentle, and not every hidden thing goes down so easy. because there's one character carrying something far heavier under a glittering golden crown, and a worn-out little teddy bear that holds the saddest secret in the whole land. Before I let Jake go, though, I have to circle back to him, because I made him sound finished a moment ago, and he isn't. Not even close. I told you where his body came from, the bite and the swelling on Joshua's head, the strange creature that started all of it. But there's a quieter secret folded inside that one, and it's the kind I find myself thinking about most, because it isn't about Jake's body at all. It's about what Jake believes happened to him, and what Jake believes is wrong. Here's the thing. Jake does not know his own origin. For all his easygoing wisdom, all that lounging, sandwich making, take it as it comes calm, Jake has no idea he came from a bite. When he thinks about why he can stretch, why he can flatten himself into a rug or balloon into a house or grow a fist the size of a barn, he reaches for a much sweeter, much sillier explanation. He thinks he rolled around in a magical mud puddle when he was a puppy. That's his story. That's the version he carries. A little dog, a magic puddle, some mud, and bam, powers. It's cute. It's the kind of thing a kid would make up and a kind dog would never think to question. And read this way, that gap just floors me, because the truth of Jake is genuinely strange and a little dark. An extra-dimensional creature reaching into his father, a foreign thing growing into a son. And Jake is walking around the whole series with a children's book version of himself in his head instead. He never goes looking. He never seems to wonder. The most powerful, most malleable body in all of Ooh, and the person living inside it has the facts completely backward, and he's perfectly happy that way. The show lets him keep the puddle. For years and years, it lets him keep it. Let me sit with that for a second, because I think it's doing something. If almost everyone in the show is hiding something underneath, Jake's twist is that the thing hidden underneath is hidden from him too. The secret isn't kept from us by Jake. It's kept from Jake by the universe. He's not lying to anybody. He just doesn't know, and his not knowing is its own kind of innocence. The same innocence that lets him be the calmest creature in a broken world. Maybe you can only be that relaxed if you never find out what you actually are. Quick aside, because I have to, I think there's a tiny ache in the idea that the chillest guy you know is chill partly because he's never looked too hard at himself. I don't fully love what that implies about being relaxed. Anyway, back to Jake. So let's talk about those powers properly, because the show is sneakier about them than it lets on. We call them stretchy powers, and Jake calls them stretchy powers, and that name makes them sound like a fun rubber band trick. But watch what he actually does. He doesn't just stretch, he pokes holes clean through himself and keeps talking. He rearranges his own bones, his own organs, his own teeth. He becomes objects with completely different shapes than a body should be able to hold. Things with gaps and loops and openings that a stretched out dog has no business becoming. That's not stretching. Stretching keeps you in one piece, just longer. What Jake's really doing is rewriting the rules of what his body even is, moment to moment. Like the shape of him is a suggestion he's free to ignore. And once you know where he came from, that stops looking like a power and starts looking like a tell. Every time Jake casually turns himself inside out to grab something off a high shelf, the show is quietly reminding you that this creature is not what he appears to be. The dog is a costume, in a sense. A real one. A loved one, the one he chooses and the one his whole heart lives inside, but a costume over something far older and far stranger than a dog. The body keeps leaking the secret even while Jake's mind holds on to the puddle. He's telling on himself with every shapeshift, and he doesn't even hear it. The show waits a long time to make that literal. And when it finally does, it's late, near the very end. There's an episode called Jake the Star Child in the backstretch of the series around 2018, and in it, that extra-dimensional creature from his origin comes back, and this time, he introduces himself properly. Warren Ampersand. And he tells Jake the thing Jake never knew, that he's Jake's biological father, that the powers were never about mud, that Jake came from him, from somewhere far outside this world. And here's where the easygoing surface gets a genuinely cold undertow, because Warren is not a sweet long-lost dad. The reunion is a trap. What gets shown, read this way, is that Warren's whole warmth is bait, that the affection is a setup, because what he actually wants is to drain Jake's youth and power and make himself young again. And the truly horrible detail, the one that turns the whole thing, is that this is apparently a pattern. Jake wasn't the only one. There were other offspring before him, and it's strongly implied what Warren does to his children. Makes them, loves them just enough to lure them close, and then takes them apart to feed his own long life. Jake's father is a creature who has children in order to consume them. Sit with what that does to the puddle story. Jake spent his whole life believing in a happy little accident, mud and magic and no one to blame. And the real version is a predator across dimensions, who made him on purpose as something to one day use up. Jake outsmarts him in the end. He switches the trick around, gets his own youth back, and casts Warren off, sends him tumbling away, down and out, falling into the dark between worlds. The relaxed dog beats the cosmic father, but he beats him only after finally learning the thing the puddle was protecting him from all along. The price of the truth is finding out your origin had teeth. What I keep turning over is how the show frames even that as something Jake mostly shakes off. He goes home, he gets back to his family, his real one, the found one, Finn and BMO, and the kids in the treehouse. He doesn't spiral. He doesn't let the cosmic horror of his own bloodline rewrite who he decided to be. And read generously, maybe that's Jake's actual secret strength, not the stretching at all, but the refusal. He learns he's the discarded experiment of a child-eating star creature, and he chooses, still, to be a dog who loves his brother and naps in the sun. The puddle was a lie, but the life he built on top of it was real, and he keeps the life. And that's the gentlest version of the show's whole question, the one we keep brushing up against tonight. Underneath Jake is something vast and strange and not entirely safe. An alien lineage, a true form that isn't a dog at all, hints that he belongs to dimensions the rest of Ooh can't even see. But on the surface, where he lives, he's just a good guy who'd do anything for the people he loves. The depth is real, and the surface is real, and Adventure Time never makes you choose between them. It just lets the warmth and the weirdness be the same animal. So that's two of them now. Two of the show's happiest faces with these quiet undertows running beneath. Finn the found boy and Jake the borrowed dog, and neither secret is the kind that breaks your heart, not really. Theirs are secrets about where you come from, and the surprising softness of choosing not to be ruled by it. But I keep telling you the saddest one is still coming. And it is, because there's a figure I've been leaving alone on purpose since almost the first words tonight. And it's time I finally walked you all the way down to him. And now we come to the secret I've been circling since the very first minute. The one I planted as a seed and kept promising we'd dig up because it's hidden underneath the silliest character in the whole show. And it turns out to be the most heartbreaking thing in all of Ooh. I want to be honest with you about why I'm putting it here this early, instead of saving it for the end like a big finale. It's because this is the emotional core of everything. This is the heart the rest of the night beats around. If you only carried one secret home with you from these 2 hours, if you fell asleep right after this and forgot all the others, I'd want it to be this one. It's the single saddest thing the show keeps tucked away, and the show keeps it tucked away so well, behind so many jokes, that a lot of people watch for years and never feel the full weight of it land. So we're going to slow all the way down. We're going to sit with it properly. No rushing, no skating past. Just this. The character is the Ice King, and if you've seen even a handful of episodes, you already have a picture of him, and the picture is funny. He's the joke villain. The doddering old man with the long blue beard and the pointy crown and the bird-like nose, stomping around his freezing mountain, kidnapping princesses for reasons he can never quite articulate, talking to his penguins, losing every fight, whining when things don't go his way. He is, for whole early stretches of the series, pure comic relief. A problem Finn and Jake solve in the back half of an episode and then forget about. You're not supposed to take him seriously. You laugh at him. You're meant to. He's ridiculous on purpose, this needy, blustering, lonely old weirdo who can't read a room and can't take a hint and can't seem to understand why nobody likes him. And here's the masterstroke. Read this way. The thing I think is genuinely one of the most quietly brilliant pieces of storytelling the show ever pulls. All of that silliness is a setup. Every dumb little scene, every kidnapping, every tantrum, every moment you rolled your eyes at this annoying old man, the show is secretly loading all of it. Because when the reveal finally comes, when you finally learn what he is and where he came from, it doesn't just make you sad in the moment. It reaches backward. It travels back through every single scene you ever laughed at and turns it, retroactively, almost unbearable. You can't watch him the same way again. You go back to those early episodes, the ones that were nothing but a gag to you, and now they ache. That's the trick. The show spends years making you laugh at a man so it can spend the rest of itself making you grieve for him. And the laughing was never separate from the grieving. The laughing was the trap. So let me lift the crown. Underneath the Ice King, underneath the beard and the babble and the blue skin, there used to be a man, a human man. His name was Simon Petrikov, and before any of this, before Ooh even existed in the form we know it, he was a 47-year-old human archaeologist. Sit with that for a second, because it's such an ordinary, specific thing to be, an archaeologist. A man with a profession and a mind and a life. Someone who studied old things, who dug carefully through the past for a living, which is its own small heartbreak when you think about where his story goes. He was educated, he was thoughtful, he was, by every glimpse the show gives us, a kind and gentle and slightly nerdy man. And he was engaged to be married. He had a fiancée Corée. Her name was Betty. He loved her and she loved him. And they were going to have a whole life together, the way people do. And then he bought a crown. This is the part that gets me every time, because of how small it is, how casual. There's no grand quest for it, no ancient temple, no villain forcing it onto his head. Simon, doing his archaeologist thing, collecting old curiosities, bought the crown from an old dock worker up in northern Scandinavia. That's it, a transaction. Some weathered old man down by the cold water selling off oddities, and Simon, charmed by this strange ornate thing, hands over whatever he hands over and walks away with it. And then, because he's in love, because he wants to make Betty laugh, because it's the kind of goofy sweet thing you do when you're happy and engaged and the future looks bright, he puts it on to amuse her. That's the entire reason. He puts the crown on his own head as a joke, a little bit of theater for the woman he loves. Look at me, I'm a king, something like that. And in that instant, he loses his mind, not slowly, not later. In that moment, the moment the crown touches him, something reaches into Simon Petrikov and starts taking him apart. Betty watches it happen. The man she loves puts on a funny old hat to make her smile, and the lights go strange in his eyes, and he's not entirely himself anymore. And he's never going to be entirely himself again. There was a before, and there was an after. And the line between them was a single playful gesture that should have meant nothing. I think about that a lot. How the worst thing that ever happened to this man arrived disguised as a small, happy moment. How he was never given the dignity of seeing it coming. So let's talk about what the crown actually does, because the show is very precise about the bargain, and the bargain is cruel in a very specific way. The crown gives, it genuinely gives. It grants real power, ice and snow and frost, the ability to freeze the world, and it grants something even bigger than that. It grants immortality. Simon will not die. The crown will keep him alive for 1,000 years and more. By the time we meet him in the show, the Ice King has been alive for over 1,000 years. So on paper, it's an incredible gift. Power beyond ordinary people, a life that doesn't end. The two things human beings have chased and prayed for across our entire history, handed to one quiet archaeologist by a dock worker's trinket. But here's the price. In exchange for the power and the long life, the crown takes his mind, slowly, progressively. It brings on a creeping insanity that gets worse the more he wears it. And worse than the madness, it eats his memory. It erases him. Piece by piece, year by year, the crown takes away who Simon is. His knowledge, his gentleness, his sense of himself, and most cruelly of all, the people he loves. The crown reaches into the part of him that holds Betty, that holds his own name, that holds every tender thing he ever was, and it slowly, patiently empties all of it out. So the immortality isn't a gift at all, not really. It's a sentence. He gets to live forever, but he doesn't get to stay himself while he does it. He gets 1,000 years of being alive, and almost none of them, as Simon, the man is kept breathing long after the person has been scraped away. And think about the particular horror of how that goes, because it isn't all at once, which would almost be a mercy. It's gradual, which means there's a long stretch where Simon knows, where he can feel it happening to him, where he wakes up and reaches for a memory and finds a little less of it there than there was the day before, and understands exactly what that means, and can't do a single thing to stop it. Imagine feeling your own mind going, imagine knowing the names are leaving, the faces are blurring, and that the more you wear the thing keeping you alive, the more of yourself it takes, and that you can't take it off because some days you don't even remember that you'd want to. That's the trap inside the trap. The crown doesn't just steal him. For years, it makes him watch himself being stolen, helpless, lucid enough to grieve, and powerless to hold on. There's a particular cruelty in a sickness that lets you see it coming and gives you no way to refuse it. And read this way, I don't think there's any other honest way to say what the crown is. The crown is dementia. The show built a literal magic object that does, in fantasy form, exactly what that disease does to real people and the people who love them. It hands you power and longevity and then quietly trades it for yourself. It takes your memories. It takes the faces of the people you held closest. It leaves your body walking around, talking, sort of functioning, while the actual you dissolves a little more every day. And everyone who knew you has to stand there and watch it happen. Helpless, unable to reach the person they can still see right in front of them. That's not a metaphor I'm reaching for. That's just what the crown does, dressed in ice and a funny beard. And the show knew exactly what it was doing. Okay, I need to slow down even more here, because we're coming to the part that I think is the saddest single thread in the entire series, and it deserves real quiet. Go back about 1,000 years. Go back to the Mushroom War. We've touched on it before, but here's the shape of it. The global nuclear apocalypse that happened roughly 1,000 years before the main story. The catastrophe that wiped out most of humanity and broke the old world apart, and out of the ruins, eventually grew the strange candy-colored land of Ooo. That war is the crack down the middle of everything in this show. The whole sweet, bright world we love is standing on top of an ending, an extinction, a wasteland. And in the immediate aftermath of that war, in that broken, frightening, half-destroyed world, with humanity dying out all around, the crown had already begun its work on Simon. He was already slipping, already losing pieces of himself, already more Ice King than man on his bad days, wandering through the rubble of a dead civilization. And in all that ruin, Simon found a child, a little girl about 7, frightened and alone in a world that had just ended, the kind of small lost thing that breaks your heart just to picture, a baby wandering a wasteland with no one to hold her. And that child was Marceline, the same Marceline who, 1,000 years later, is one of the coolest, most guarded, most independent characters in the whole show, the vampire queen with the bass guitar and the 1,000-yard stare, the one who acts like she doesn't need anybody. Her, but tiny. Her, but helpless. A scared little kid in the ashes of the world. And Simon, even as the crown was eating him alive, even as he was losing his grip on his own name, took care of her. He protected her. This man who was already half gone, who was already feeling the cold madness creeping up on him, looked at a frightened toddler in the wreckage of everything and decided she was his to keep safe. He fed her. He kept her warm. He carried her through the dead world. He did the most human possible thing at the exact moment his humanity was being stolen from him. And there's something almost unbearable in that timing, that he found someone to love right as he was losing the ability to hold on to love at all. That whole stretch of their story gets shown to us much later, in Season 5 in an episode called Simon and Marcy. And watching it is like having your chest slowly squeezed, because you already know how it ends. You already know he won't get to keep being the person who saved her. And here's where one of those threads I left dangling finally pays off, and I almost can't say it without my voice doing something. You remember the teddy bear? I planted it way back at the start. The worn little child's toy that somehow ends up being one of the most heartbreaking objects in the entire series. And you might have wondered what an ancient creature like Marceline is doing carrying a battered old teddy around. Here's why. When Simon found her, that frightened toddler in the ruins, he gave her his teddy bear. He gave the scared little girl something soft to hold, for comfort, in a world that had nothing soft left in it. A grown man, an archaeologist, losing his mind, hands a baby his bear so she won't be afraid. The bear's name is Hambo, and that's the answer to a question the show asked you ages before it ever let you understand it. The toy that means more to Marceline than almost anything she owns, the one possession she would tear the world apart to get back, is the bear Simon gave her when she was small and terrified, and he was the only one who came. It was never just a toy. It was the last gift from the man who saved her before he disappeared inside the crown. That's the loop closing. That's the soft little object turning out to hold 1,000 years of grief. I'm going to take one small breath here and just say, gently, if you're lying in the dark right now and this one's getting to you a little, you're not alone. It gets to me too, every time. And if these are the corners of this show that stay with you the way they stay with me, I'd genuinely love for you to stick around for the rest of these quiet hours together. That's all. Now let's go back into it, because there's one more piece of this I have to walk you through, and it's the piece that breaks people. There's an episode in Season 4. It's called I Remember You. And if you ever want to understand what Adventure Time actually is, underneath all the candy, this is one of the episodes you point to. By the time it happens, in the present day of the show, Simon is long gone. There is no Simon anymore. There's only the Ice King, the silly babbling old man, his memory almost entirely eaten away, 1,000 years of the crown's work nearly complete. He doesn't remember Betty. He doesn't remember being human. He doesn't remember the war, or the ruins, or the little girl he carried through them. And Marceline, who remembers all of it, who has carried the memory of him for 1,000 years, has to live in a world where the man who saved her doesn't know her face. In that episode, Marceline confronts the Ice King with a scrapbook. Old photographs, old pages, fragments saved from that long ago time. And inside it, there's a message Simon left for her. He wrote it back when he could still feel himself slipping, back when he still knew what was coming, back when there was still enough of Simon left to understand that soon there wouldn't be. He left her words, a goodbye, written by a man who knew the crown was about to take the last of him and wanted to leave something behind for the child he loved. some proof that he had been there, that he had cared, that he was sorry for what he was about to become. He wrote it knowing he wouldn't remember writing it. He wrote it as a man waving goodbye to someone from a train he couldn't get off. And what the episode does with that, the thing it's most famous for, is turn it into a song. The two of them, in a sense, perform it together. And read this way, I think it's one of the most devastating inversions of a love song anyone's ever put on screen, because a duet is supposed to be two people singing to each other, two people who both know what the song is about, two voices meeting in the same feeling. But this isn't that. This can't be that, because only one of them knows. Marceline is singing to Simon, to the man underneath, pouring out 1,000 years of loss and longing and please, please remember me. And the Ice King is singing back, but he isn't Simon, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know it's goodbye. He doesn't even know it's sad. He's just an old man humming along to a tune, the words of his own past coming out of his mouth without him recognizing a single one of them as his. It looks like a duet. It has the shape of a duet, but it's really one person grieving out loud and another person who has forgotten there's anything to grieve. The whole tragedy of The Crown is in that gap, in that terrible little space between the two voices, one of them remembering everything and the other one having lost the very thing the song is made of. I have to stop and just feel that for a second, because that's the whole show, isn't it? That's the candy and the wound in one frame. A funny old man and a teenage-looking vampire, two cartoon characters in a brightly colored kingdom, and underneath the bright colors, a man who lost himself to save a child, and a child who spent 1,000 years missing the man he used to be. He's standing right in front of her. She can see him, she can touch him, and he is completely irretrievably gone, and there's nothing she can do but sing at the empty space where he used to be, and hope some flicker of him hears it. The cruelest thing the show ever does is let them be in the same room and still be 1,000 years apart. And the thing that wrecks me most is that he tried. Back when there was still enough of him, he understood that this exact moment was coming. He knew that one day she'd come looking for the man who saved her and find only the Ice King, a stranger wearing his shape. So he reached forward through all those years and left her something anyway, knowing he'd never be there to see it received, knowing the version of him that wrote it would be long gone by the time she read it. That's an act of love performed entirely on faith, a message in a bottle thrown into 1,000 years of fog. He couldn't save himself for her. He couldn't promise to remember her. The only thing left in his power was to make sure that somewhere, in a scrapbook, in his own handwriting, there'd be proof that once he had loved her completely. And she kept it. Of course she kept it. She kept the bear and she kept the book, and she kept the memory of him intact for 10 centuries, holding both ends of a love that he could only ever hold one end of. And I think this is the moment to say something about why this works as well as it does. Because it isn't just that the story is sad. Lots of stories are sad. It's that the show earned it by hiding it. For years, the Ice King was nothing to you. He was the bother, the punchline, the harmless creep on the mountain you didn't think twice about. The show let you dismiss him completely. And then it showed you, very quietly, that the man you'd been dismissing was the most tragic figure in the entire world. That every annoying thing he did was the residue of a gentle person who'd been erased. That his loneliness and his confusion and his desperate need to be liked were the symptoms of a mind that had been hollowed out by the very thing keeping him alive. You laughed at a sick man for years and didn't know it, and once you do know it, you can never go back to laughing. That's the show reaching into your own memory the same way The Crown reached into Simon's, and rearranging what's there. There's one more thread I want to leave hanging here, just barely touch and then set back down, the way the show would. The crown itself, where did it come from? Because Simon bought it from a dock worker? Sure, but the dock worker didn't make it. And the crown's real story goes back much, much further than one archaeologist in northern Scandinavia. There's a deeper origin to that thing, an older history, a chain of people it touched before it ever got to Simon. And I'm not going to crack it open tonight, because it belongs to a later part of the night and it deserves its own quiet. For now, just hold the shape of it. The crown was hurting people long before it found Simon, and the question of where it truly came from, and who else it unmade, is a thread we'll pull on when the time is right. Tonight, the crown is just the thing that took a gentle man away from the little girl he saved. That's enough to carry for now. And one small careful note, said softly, because I want to be honest with you about the details. You'll sometimes see the Ice King's age given as 1,043, and sometimes as 1,046. The figure that comes up more often, the one most people land on, is 1,046. I mention it only because I'd rather tell you where the edges are a little fuzzy than pretend everything's nailed down to the year. The exact number wobbles a touch depending on where you look. But whether it's 43 or 46 on top of that 1,000, the point doesn't move at all. It's more years than any person was ever meant to carry. It's 1,000 and change of being kept alive past the point of being yourself. The fuzziness in the math doesn't soften the weight of it even a little. So let this one sit. I mean it. Of everything we talk about tonight, this is the chunk I'd ask you to let breathe the longest, because it's the one that people carry out of this show and keep carrying for years. A 47-year-old archaeologist named Simon Petrikov, in love, about to be married, who bought a strange crown to make his fiancée Carpe laugh, and lost his entire self in the space of a single playful moment. A man who, even as he was being erased, found a frightened child in the ruins of the world and gave her a teddy bear so she wouldn't be afraid. A man who left her a goodbye he knew he wouldn't remember writing. And 1,000 years later, a song that looks like a duet but is really just one person reaching across an unbridgeable distance towards someone who's standing right there and can't reach back. The silliest character in the show, the saddest secret in the land, both at once, which is the only way Adventure Time ever does anything. And that little girl Simon saved, she didn't just survive him. She grew up, and she grew guarded, and she built her whole life around the people she lets close and the ones she keeps at a careful distance. Which brings us to her and to one particular person she could never quite decide how close to let in. Because the next secret lives in a t-shirt, a song, and a kiss that two people held back from each other for years. There's another character who spent her whole long life losing people, and the secret she keeps isn't under a hat or a crown. It's inside a song she didn't want to sing in front of the wrong person, with the wrong person standing right there in the room. And I want to carry the warmth forward from Simon into her, because the two of them belong to the same quiet category, the people in this show most shaped by long lives and long silences. Simon lived too long and lost himself in pieces, and the girl he once looked after, the one he carried through the end of the world, grew up to live even longer and to lose people the slow way, one at a time, over centuries. So when she finally sings about somebody she can't stop feeling things for, you're not hearing a teenager with a crush. You're hearing somebody who has had 1,000 years to learn exactly how much it costs to love a thing you can lose. And I think that's the connection the show wants you to feel, even if it never spells it out. Simon and Marceline are bound together by more than that frozen apocalypse where a man in a crown looked after a frightened little girl. They're bound by the same wound, the wound of duration, of living and living and living while the world and the people in it wear away around you. Most of us get one ordinary span. We lose people, sure, but we lose them at a human pace, spread across a human life. These two don't. These two keep going past the point where keeping going stops being a gift and starts being the thing you carry. And what I keep noticing is that the show puts its softest, saddest secrets inside exactly those two. The man who lost his mind to time and the girl who lost everyone to it. They are the show's two great experts on loss. And that expertise is the hidden thing underneath both of them. Let me reintroduce her properly because she's easy to underestimate if you only catch her in passing. Marceline, the vampire queen. And here's the first number that should stop you, because the show drops it so lightly. Marceline is over 1,000 years old. More than 1,000 years. And she looks what? 18, maybe 20, 21 at the very most. A cool, older teenager kind of figure. The one with the bass guitar and the boots and the easy slouch. The one who floats a little off the ground like gravity is optional and she just can't be bothered. She reads as the carefree one. The unbothered one. And underneath that, she is older than every kingdom you've seen. Older than most of the ruins. Old enough that she remembers the world before it broke. Picture that for a second. The most laid-back person in the room has watched 1,000 years go by. Everyone she might have grown up with, in the ordinary sense, is long gone. She just kept going. And think about what that actually does to the way you'd carry yourself. If you'd lived 1,000 years, if you'd watched friend after friend after friend get old and slip away, while your own face stayed 18, you might learn to slouch too. You might learn to keep things light, to crack the joke first, to float a little off the ground so nothing ever fully touches you. The coolness reads, to me anyway, less like genuine indifference and more like armor a person builds when they've been hurt by time too many times to count. You stop letting yourself get attached too hard because you already know how the story ends. You already know you're the one who stays while everybody else leaves. So you slouch. You play your bass. You act like nothing is a big deal precisely because so many things have been the biggest possible deal and you couldn't keep a single one of them. That's the read I can't shake with Marceline. The carefree pose is the scar tissue. And she isn't only old, she's only half human. Marceline is half demon, half human, and her father is Hunson Abadir, a demon lord who rules a place called the Nightosphere, and this is the part that tells you everything about the family she comes from, subsists on souls. That's her dad, a lord of a soul-eating underworld, so even her bloodline is a kind of hidden double thing, the way so much in this show is. Half of her belongs to a candy-colored world with a girl in it she can't stop circling, and half of her belongs to a father who feeds on souls in a realm built out of red and shadow. She carries both, the demon and the kid who just wants to play music and be wanted. And the show, the way it does, lets that contradiction sit in her, without ever fully explaining it away. Now, set her down across from somebody who looks like her opposite, Princess Bubblegum, the brilliant one, the ruler of the Candy Kingdom, the scientist, the monarch with a plan for everything and a guarded little fortress around her own heart. Where Marceline slouches, Bubblegum stands very straight. Where Marceline floats and drifts and lets things go soft, Bubblegum controls. She's the smartest person in most rooms, and she's also one of the most walled off, the kind of person who answers a feeling with a project. And I'll tell you now, gently, that Bubblegum is carrying an origin secret of her own, a story about where she actually came from and what she's actually made of. And we are going to get to that, but not yet. For now, just hold the shape of her. Brilliant, guarded, a ruler who would rather solve you than admit she needs you. Keep that next to the 1,000-year-old girl with the bass, and you've got two people who are both in completely different ways, very good at not saying the thing. And here's what I find so beautiful about how the show handles the two of them, because it almost never just tells you. It tells you through objects, through a song, through what gets kept, and what gets worn, and what gets left unsaid for years. Read this way, the secret here isn't a fact you can look up, like a surname or a birth. The secret here is emotional, and it's hidden in the things these two won't say out loud, sometimes for 7 whole years of story. So you have to read them the way you read a quiet person you love. You watch what they keep. And the thing Bubblegum keeps is a t-shirt, a rock t-shirt that Marceline gave her as a gift at some point in the long tangle of their history. And Bubblegum keeps it. She doesn't just keep it in a drawer either, the way you keep something you've half forgotten. She wears it as pajamas. The brilliant, guarded, buttoned-up ruler of the Candy Kingdom goes to sleep in a band shirt the vampire gave her. And that small, soft fact, eventually clarified and made unmistakable much later in Distant Lands, in the special called Obsidian, becomes a whole symbol of what's between them. Think about what a thing like that actually says. You don't sleep in something a person gave you for years and years if they were nothing to you. You don't keep the soft, worn shirt of someone you've truly let go of. That shirt is a confession she never had to speak. It just sits there, in a drawer, getting worn at the seams, saying the thing for her. And read this way, that choice is so deliberate on the show's part, because Bubblegum, of all people, is the one who would never say it. She's the ruler who deflects, who busies herself, who would sooner reorganize an entire kingdom than admit she misses somebody. A woman like that doesn't write you a letter. She doesn't make a speech. But she keeps the shirt. She wears the shirt to bed night after night in the one place nobody's watching, the one place the guard comes down. And so the show lets the object carry what the character can't. The pajamas say the thing the princess would choke on. That's such a tender piece of writing. And it's so quiet you could miss it entirely if you weren't looking for the secret underneath. And that gets me honestly because it's so human. We all have a version of that shirt. The thing you can't throw out. The hoodie at the back of the closet. The object that holds a person you maybe didn't keep and that you can't quite make yourself let go of, because letting go of the object feels like letting go of them. The show knew exactly what it was doing, handing these two characters a piece of worn cloth instead of a speech. It trusted you to understand what a kept shirt means, because most of us somewhere are keeping one too. Okay, stay with me, because the other place this all lives is in a song, and the song is where it gets tender and confused and real. The episode is in season 3, and it's called What Was Missing. And let me set the scene a little, because if you're drifting off and you've never seen it, the shape of the moment matters. The characters are stuck. There's a magical door that will only open in response to a song that's genuinely true, a song that comes from a real feeling. And so the music in this episode isn't just music, it's a kind of lie detector. You can't fake your way through that door. Whatever you sing has to be real, or it doesn't work. And into that setup, with Bubblegum standing right there, Marceline picks up her bass and sings. The song is called I'm Just Your Problem, and it's about Bubblegum. And I want to be careful about how I describe what that song actually is, because it gets flattened a lot. People sometimes talk about what was missing like it reveals a simple, friendly rivalry between the two of them, like they're just two prickly people who rub each other the wrong way, and that's the whole story. And I'd say, softly, that the episode is more tangled than rivalry, because listen to what's actually in the song. It's confusion, It's hurt. There's this ache running all the way through it. Marceline reaching toward Bubblegum and not understanding why Bubblegum keeps pulling back, keeps avoiding her, keeps holding her at arm's length. It's conflicted. It's the sound of someone who can't tell whether they're angry or heartbroken, and who suspects it might be both. Rivalry is the word you use when you don't want to look too closely. But the feelings in that song are longing and bewilderment and a kind of raw, exposed want. That's not two rivals. That's somebody singing at a person who won't let them in. And remember, this is the episode where the song has to be true to work at all. So whatever's pouring out of Marceline in that moment isn't a pose or a performance. It's the real thing, the genuine feeling dragged up into the open because that's the only kind of song the moment will accept. The episode practically forces her honesty, and what comes out is hurt. And the title alone tells you something? I'm just your problem. There's such a wound in that. The idea that to this other person, you're not a friend, you're not a love, you're just a difficulty, a thing to be managed, an inconvenience. And Marceline, the 1,000-year-old who's seen everything, is reduced in that moment to wondering if she's nothing more than a nuisance to the one person she keeps orbiting. That's the opposite of cool detachment. That's a person whose guard has completely slipped in song in front of exactly the wrong audience, because Bubblegum is right there to hear it. So for years, that's where it sits. Songs and shirts and avoidance and that prickly charged distance between them. The show keeps circling it and never quite landing the plane. You feel the gravity between these two episode after episode, season after season, and the series just refuses to say the quiet part out loud, which is its own kind of honesty about people like them, people who guard, people who have been hurt, people who would genuinely rather sing a coded song or lend you a shirt than ever stand still and say what they mean. And then, finally, at the very end, it lands. The series finale, Season 10, the episode called Come Along With Me in 2018. After 10 years of subtext and kept objects and songs that meant more than they said, Bubblegum and Marceline share an on-screen kiss. On screen. No ambiguity, no looking away, no leaving it for you to infer. And it's not framed as a triumphant fireworks moment either. It comes wrapped in fear, because in the middle of all of it, with everything falling apart around them, Marceline says she doesn't want to lose Bubblegum again. Again. That one word does so much work. It tells you she's already lost her before, in the long stretches of cold distance and avoidance, in all the years the two of them spent not saying it. And it tells you what was underneath the slouch and the base and the 1,000 years of cool the whole time. Terror. The plain terror of losing someone you love to time, to silence, to the sheer length of a life. And I find it so right that the show waited until the very end to let this land, and that when it landed through fear rather than joy. Because a person like Marceline, a person who's lost everyone before, wouldn't reach for someone in a burst of easy happiness. She'd reach because the alternative finally scared her more than the reaching did. That's what 1,000 years teaches you. Eventually, the fear of losing somebody for good outweighs the fear of letting them see how much you care. The kiss isn't her being brave in the simple sense. It's her being more afraid of the silence than of the love. After 10 years of slouching and joking and floating above it all, the cool finally cracks, and what's behind it is somebody who just doesn't want to be left alone again. Now, here's the secret behind the secret, the real world one, because it's lovely and it surprised me when I learned it. That kiss, the one that fans had wanted and felt and read between the lines of for the better part of a decade, was not in the original pitch for the show. It wasn't a master plan laid down at the start and slowly revealed. The executive producer, Adam Muto, confirmed that the kiss was long in development, yes, but that it evolved naturally over the course of the series, rather than being something baked in from the beginning. It grew. The way a real relationship grows, the way these things actually happen, slowly, through years of small moments accumulating into something undeniable. The story found its way there. It wasn't shipped there on rails. And there's something a little moving in that, when you sit with it. The thing fans felt for years, the thing they swore was under the surface, wasn't a secret the creators were smugly withholding. It was a feeling the show itself was slowly growing into, discovering the same way the characters were, a bit at a time, until it became too true to leave unsaid. And the moment itself, the actual kiss in the finale, came down to one person pushing for it at the right time. A storyboard artist named Hannah K. Nistropol. Because when the script reached that beat, the script didn't say they kiss. The script just said the two of them have a moment. That's all. Have a moment. And Hannah K. Nistropol suggested that the moment should be the kiss. That after everything, after all the songs and the shirt and the years of withheld feeling, this was where it should finally become undeniable. Think about how close it came to staying vague forever. A line in a script that just said, "have a moment," and one artist in the room who looked at that and said, "No, let it be the thing. Let them say it." I love that the most openly tender beat in the whole series existed for a while as two soft words on a page, and somebody had to reach out and make it real, which honestly rhymes with the characters themselves. Even the making of it was a story about somebody deciding the feeling was worth saying out loud. And I want to bring it all the way back to Simon, because this is where these two passages quietly hold hands. Remember Simon? Remember the terror of losing someone to time, the crown that ate him slowly, the man who lost a whole self and a whole person he loved while a child watched. Read this way, "I don't want to lose you again," is the same sentence Simon's entire tragedy is written in. It's the exact same fear, just sung in a different key. Because here's what the show keeps quietly suggesting across the whole of Ooh, the thing it never says plainly, but builds over and over. The people who live the longest are the ones most haunted by loss. The 1,000-year-old vampire and the man who froze through 1,000 winters are the two who understand better than anyone that to love someone is to sign up to lose them eventually. And so intimacy becomes the dangerous thing, the thing you hide, the shirt you wear in private, the song you'd rather not sing. The moment a script almost left vague, they guard their hearts not because they don't feel, but because they have lived long enough to know precisely what feeling costs. That's the saddest secret these long-lived characters carry. Not a monster under the skin, just the knowledge that everything ends, and the love is the part that hurts when it does. Marceline learned to slouch and joke and float above it. Simon learned eventually to let go. But the fear is the same fear, passed between them like an inheritance. The inheritance of anyone who outlives the people they love. And that brings us, gently, to the one who looked least lonely of all. The ruler, made of candy, who built a whole family and then unmade it, and whose own origin is the next secret we need to lift. And here's the part that still knocks the wind out of me. The same princess who held a kiss for 7 years, who buried a whole love story under a band t-shirt and a song, was hiding something even bigger, and this one wasn't about who she loved. It was about what she was. Because Princess Bubblegum isn't a girl who happens to rule over candy. She isn't a queen who sits above the candy people and governs them the way you'd govern any other kingdom. The secret, the one folded deepest under all that pink, is that there is no line between her and the things she rules. She isn't the keeper of the candy. She is the candy. And the story of where she actually came from might be the loneliest thing in the entire kingdom. Let me slow down here, because this is the kind of reveal that recolors everything you thought you understood about her. For most of the show, you read Bubblegum as the scientist, the smart one, the one in the lab coat with the goggles pushed up on her forehead, mixing things in beakers, building machines, fixing problems with her brain, while everyone else runs around screaming. She's the adult in the room. She's competent in a way that's almost intimidating. And so you naturally assume she's like us, just smarter. A person who learned chemistry and biology and decided to apply it to a kingdom full of living desserts. You assume she's the author standing outside the story she's writing. But she isn't standing outside it. She's made of it. Bubblegum discovers, across the later stretch of the show, that she's an incarnation of something called the Candy Elemental. And I need to sit with that word, elemental, because it's doing a lot of work. The world of Adventure Time, underneath all the silliness, runs on 4 classical elements. Not the ones you learned in school. Not earth and air and water and fire. In this world, the 4 are fire, ice, candy, and slime. That's the bedrock. That's what reality is supposedly built out of. And for each of those elements, there's an incarnation, a living embodiment, a being who doesn't just control that element, but is that element given a face and a will and a personality. Bubblegum is the candy one. She's the living embodiment of candy as a fundamental force of the universe, which means when she materializes a fresh batch of candy out of thin air, she isn't doing chemistry. She's doing something closer to prayer answering itself. And when she communes with past incarnations of the candy elemental, the ones who came before her, stretching back who knows how far, she's talking to her own lineage, her own recurring self, the candy soul that keeps coming back wearing new bodies. That lab coat, all those beakers, the goggles, the methodical scientist routine. Read this way, the show implies it's almost a costume, a way for a small god to pass as a clever person. She dresses up as someone who studies candy so she doesn't have to say out loud that she is candy, all the way down. And honestly, the first time that clicked for me, I had to pause the episode and just stare at the ceiling for a second, because it reframes her whole vibe. Okay, back in. Now here's where the loneliness comes in, and this is the part I think about most. Go back to the very beginning of her. Not the princess in the castle, but the start. Bubblegum was created from sentient pink gum, living gum, a pink, aware, breathing material that somehow became conscious, became her. And picture what that actually means for a moment, because the show mostly lets you skate past it, but if you stop and feel it, it's enormous. She wakes up, she's alive, she's the embodiment of an entire element of the universe, and there's no one there, no parents, no people, no species she belongs to, just her, and a whole lot of raw pink material, and the silence. So what does she do? She makes family. Alongside her, from the same mother gum, comes her brother, Nettie. She brings him into being out of that same source, that same gum, the way you'd reach into the only material you have and try to shape a companion out of it. And she creates the one she'd come to call her Uncle Gumbald. Not because there was an uncle out there somewhere who came to visit. She made him. Because she was alone, and being a god of an entire element apparently doesn't protect you from that particular ache. She had the power to materialize candy out of nothing. And the first thing she reached for that power to do, the deepest thing, was to not be by herself anymore. She built relatives. She manufactured a family because the universe forgot to give her one. I find that almost unbearably sad, and the show treats it so lightly, so quickly, that you could blink and miss the weight of it. And then it goes dark, because making family out of candy doesn't mean the family loves you back the way you hoped. Gumbald, this uncle she created to fill the silence, eventually turns on her. He decides she's a problem. Too smart, too powerful, too much in the way of whatever he wanted. And his solution is one of the quietly cruelest ideas in the whole series. He tries to simplify her. He cooks up something the show calls dum-dum juice. And the entire point of it is to take this brilliant, complicated being, this incarnation of candy itself, and dumb her down. Erase her mind. Reduce her into something simple and harmless and easy to push around. He didn't try to kill her, exactly. He tried to delete who she was and leave the body walking around empty, which is, if you think about it, a worse thing to wish on someone. And it backfires. The dum-dum juice ends up turned around on him, and Gumbald, the uncle she made because she couldn't stand being alone, is transformed into a punch bowl, a literal candy punch bowl sitting there in the kingdom, a piece of party furniture that used to be a scheming relative. There's something so Adventure Time about that. The horror and the joke holding hands. A man plotting to mentally erase his niece, and his punishment is to become the thing you ladle fruit punch out of at a celebration. It's funny. And then a half second later, it isn't funny at all, because she made him, he betrayed her, and now he's Decortor. Before I keep going, can I just say quickly, if any of this is landing for you, if you like the kind of breakdown where we sit in the sad parts of a kid's show until 2 in the morning, it genuinely helps me out. If you subscribe, it just means we get to keep doing nights like this one. Okay, that's the only time I'll bring it up. Back to the loneliest god in Ooh. Because Gumbald wasn't even the first one she made wrong. The first creation before the brother, the one that you could say set the whole pattern in motion, was Lemongrab, the Earl of Lemongrab. And if you've seen even a little Adventure Time, you know exactly the energy I mean. That tall, sour, screaming lemon man whose voice does that awful warped electronic shriek, who's furious at everything, who can't be reasoned with, who seems to exist in a constant state of pain and confusion and rage. Lemongrab was Bubblegum's first attempt at making a living thing. And he came out wrong. He's introduced in an episode called Too Young, back in season 3, and the situation around it makes the whole thing even heavier. Bubblegum, through a mishap with the science of the kingdom, gets magically reverted. She's turned back into a 13-year-old, a child. And by the rules of the Candy Kingdom, a 13-year-old isn't old enough to rule. So the throne is suddenly, technically, up for grabs. And who steps forward to seize it? Lemongrab. Her firstborn creation, the one made wrong, comes to take the kingdom the moment its creator is too young and too small to hold on to it. He arrives with his rules and his shrieking and his total lack of warmth, ready to govern a people he doesn't love. Because the one who made him, without enough of whatever it is that lets a creature be at peace. There's a sequel to it too, an episode called You Made Me. And even just that title, You Made Me, is the whole tragedy in 3 words. Because that's the accusation, isn't it? You made me. You made me like this. You made me wrong, and then you left me out at the edge of the kingdom, and you didn't fix it, and you didn't love me enough, and you made me. The thing turning to face the one who brought it into being, and asking why it has to hurt this much. So let me try to pull all of this together, because once you have these pieces, the bubblegum you thought you knew completely changes shape. The reputation she carries, all through the fandom and inside the show too, is control freak, The princess who monitors everyone, the one with the cameras and the surveillance, the one who manages her people a little too tightly, who can't let go, who has to have her hand on every lever. People hold it against her. She's the uptight one, the authoritarian in the candy crown. But look at her again with everything we just laid out. She's an incarnation of an element of the universe. She woke up alone with the power to make candy into anything, and she used it over and over to build herself a family, and that family kept going wrong. The first one came out as Lemongrab, made wrong, never loved enough, and grew up to try to take her throne. The uncle came out as a traitor who wanted to erase her mind, and ended up a punch bowl. She's a god of candy who keeps reaching into the only thing she's made of, shaping people out of it, and then watching those people resent her, betray her, malfunction, leave. So read this way, the control isn't tyranny. The show implies it's grief management. Her need to watch everything, to manage everything, to keep her hand on every lever, looks completely different once you know that everything she ever made with love has a habit of turning on her. Of course she watches. Of course she can't let go. Her whole kingdom, every candy citizen in it, is one long, anxious attempt to finally make a family that won't go wrong, that won't leave, that won't become a punch bowl or a screaming lemon at the gates. Her secret, underneath the lab coat and the crown and the cool competence, is that she is candy. And she made all of this because she couldn't bear to be alone, and she's terrified of losing it the way she's already lost so much of it. And what this suggests about Lemongrab specifically stays with me. He's the creation that came out wrong and was never loved enough, and the show keeps him around, keeps returning to him, won't let him just be a one-off joke. Read this way, he's the guilty conscience of a creator god. He's the question Bubblegum can't stop having to answer. Because if you have the power to bring living, feeling things into the world, what exactly do you owe them once they're here? If you make something and it comes out in pain, is that its fault or yours? The show asks that very quietly, under all the shrieking, what do we owe the things and the people we bring into being? It never lectures you about it. It just gives you a sour yellow man who shouldn't have to suffer, and lets you feel the answer. I should be honest about a couple of things here. The way I'd want a friend to be honest with me, this origin, the candy elemental, the gum, Nettie, Gumball, all of it isn't handed to you in one clean reveal. There's no single episode where Bubblegum sits down and explains her whole self in order. It's told in pieces, scattered across several episodes and some of the material around the show. So what I've just walked you through is a picture you assemble, not a single scene you can point to. I've tried to keep to what the show actually shows, and there's one thing I'm deliberately leaving out because I want to get this right. There's a piece of older fan research floating around that says Bubblegum had a tracking device implanted in someone, a GPS implant, and as far as I can tell, that mixes up two different things, a portable little GPS gadget with an actual implant. What the show gives us is the portable device, not something planted inside a body. So I'm not going to tell you it's an implant, because I don't think the show earns that, and you deserve the careful version. Now here's the detail I can't stop turning over, the one that ties this whole passage to something I mentioned earlier. The four elements: fire, ice, candy, slime. Bubblegum is candy, but look at that list again. Ice is in it. Ice is an element too. Ice has an incarnation too. And we've already spent time tonight on a man in a blue robe with a crown that froze his mind and stole his name. The crown that runs on cold. Suddenly, the Ice King isn't just a sad old wizard off in his lonely mountain, separate from everything else. He's standing in the same cosmology as Bubblegum. Same four-cornered structure of reality. She's the candy corner, warm and pink and godlike and lonely. He's near the ice corner, frozen and confused and lonely. Two embodiments of two elements, both of them hollowed out by what their nature did to them, both of them alone in completely different ways. The show built a quiet rhyme into its own foundations and barely points at it. The princess, who is candy, and the king undone by ice are not strangers. They're two faces of the same elemental machine, and both of them are hiding the same wound under their crowns. And once you see that the show is making whole people out of loneliness and language and the things they can't say plainly, you start noticing it everywhere. Which is exactly where I want to take you next, to a creature who speaks a language almost no one bothers to translate, and a little robot who was built, quite literally, so that somebody wouldn't have to be alone. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. After sitting with all that loneliness wrapped in pink, not every secret in Ooh is a tragedy. Some of them are quiet in a softer way. Some of them are hidden inside a language most of us never learn, or tucked away inside a little computer who only ever wanted a family. So let me slow down here and tell you about two of those, because they belong together even though on the surface they look like nothing alike. One is a rainbow horse who speaks a language Finn can't follow. The other is a small blue-green video game console with a face and a voice. And both of them underneath are really about the same thing: being understood, being one of the few people, or one of the few someones, who bothers to listen. Start with Lady Rainicorn. If you've watched the show, you already know her, even if you've never quite thought about her this way. She's Jake's partner, this long unicorn rainbow creature who floats through the air in these gentle ribbons of color. And she is, in the most literal sense, a member of the family. She and Jake are parents. They have 5 children together. And here's the detail that's so easy to skim past when you're a kid watching cartoons, because kids just accept it. The way kids accept everything. Lady Rainicorn only speaks Korean. That's it. That's her entire spoken language. She doesn't speak English. She never switches over for the audience's convenience. When she talks in Korean, full stop, and the show simply trusts you to keep up, or to feel your way through. And the people around her do keep up. Jake understands her completely. He's fluent. He answers her, he laughs with her, he has whole conversations with her, and you, the viewer, are sort of standing outside the window watching 2 people who clearly love each other communicate in a language you might not share. Their children understand her too. All 5 of them are fluent. And let me actually name them because the names themselves carry a little secret. Charlie, Viola, Kim Kil-won, TV, and Jake Jr. Those are the 5. Now, sit with that list for a second. Charlie, Viola, a very Korean name in Kim Kil-won, then TV, and then Jake Jr. It's such a strange, charming little spread of names, and there's a real-world reason behind the texture of it. Here's the secret underneath the secret. Adventure Time was animated in Korea. Many of the storyboard artists working on the show were Korean, and that production reality, that whole crew of Korean artists shaping the look and feel of OO, fed directly into the choice to have Lady Rainicorn speak Korean in the first place. It wasn't a random gag. It came out of who was actually in the room making the thing. The language she speaks is, in a quiet way, a thank you to the people who drew her. And I find that genuinely lovely. Read this way, Lady's untranslated Korean turns a behind-the-scenes fact into something tender. Think about what it actually means inside the story. Jake didn't get a partner who conveniently spoke his language. He fell for someone whose words he had to learn. He had to put in the work. He had to become fluent in her, not the other way around. And their kids grew up bilingual in love, fluent in their mom's language, because that's how you stay close to her. The show implies, without ever spelling it out, that this is what love can look like. Love means being one of the few who bothered to learn another person's language. Everyone else just hears beautiful sounds they can't parse. The family hears her. That's the whole difference. That's the line between being near someone and actually knowing them. I should pause on one thing here gently, because it floats around online. Some fans have claimed over the years that Lady's untranslated Korean secretly contains mature or hidden adult content, little jokes the English audience was never meant to catch. And I want to be careful and honest with you. That's fan reported. There are no officially verified quotes backing it up, so I'm going to leave it exactly where it belongs, as a rumor, not a fact. Nothing official confirms it. It's the kind of thing the internet loves to whisper about, precisely because the language is opaque to most of the audience, and an opaque thing always grows legends. But I'm not going to hand you a legend as truth. What I can tell you for certain is the warmer, realer secret, which is the production one, and that one stands on its own. There's also more to where Lady comes from than you might guess from the everyday version of her, the one who's just Jake's girlfriend drifting around the tree fort. For a long stretch of the show, she's defined mostly in relation to Jake, almost always at his side. But there's an episode in the 8th season called Lady Rainicorn of the Crystal Dimension that pulls her out on her own and lets us actually see her. And that title isn't a metaphor. Lady is from the Crystal Dimension. She came to OO by accident, she crossed over from somewhere else entirely, and ended up here, in this Candyland, building a life and a family in a world that wasn't originally hers. And here's a small detail about that episode that ties right back into everything we've been talking about. It was the first time Lady appeared without Jake. The first time, and because Jake wasn't there to be the bridge for us, the show subtitled her dialogue. Sit with that for a moment because it's quietly brilliant. For years, Jake had been our translator, our way in. When he stepped out of the frame, the show had to give us another door, so it put words on the screen. It's almost like the production was admitting something out loud. You only ever understood her through him. Take him away, and you need help. You need to be taught. And isn't that the whole point of her? She's understood by the ones who learn her, and the rest of us need a little assistance to be led into the circle. An accidental arrival from another dimension who became so beloved that her family learned to speak her, while the audience stood outside until the show finally kindly handed us the subtitles. Okay, let me catch my breath because I get a little misty about Lady, and pivot to the other one, the little machine, BMO. If Lady is about a language you have to learn, BMO is about something even more bare than that. BMO is about being built on purpose to be loved, and it starts with a name. For most of the show, BMO is the comic relief, right? This sweet, slightly chaotic little video game console who plays games with Finn and Jake, talks to its own reflection, gets into tiny adventures, generally bumbles around being adorable. You don't think too hard about the name. BMO. It's just a cute sound. But in the 5th season, in an episode literally called Be More, the show tells you what those letters actually stand for. BMO means BMO, Be More. That's the name. That's the instruction stitched into this little creature from the moment it was switched on. Don't just exist. Be more than what you are. And once you know that, the episode opens up the rest of the secret, and it reframes everything. BMO was created by a man named Mo Giovanni. And here is the part that quietly breaks me. Mo built BMO to care for a child he never actually had. So picture that. This inventor makes a small, gentle, loving machine, programs it to look after a kid, to play with a kid, to keep a kid company, and then there's no kid. The child never came. And so Mo released BMO into the wild, sent it out to find another family, to go be what it was built to be for anyone, since the someone it was made for never arrived. I have to just say plainly, that's one of the saddest, soft little backstories in the whole show, and it's hiding inside the most cheerful character. A machine designed to love a child who didn't exist, set loose to find a family worth loving instead. And it found one, but not quickly. This is the detail that turns the whole thing into something almost mythic. BMO's past stretches back much further than you would ever guess. Thousands. BMO traveled through space, drifting, for an unfathomable stretch of time, and there's a Distant Lands episode just called BMO that ends on the exact image this has all been building toward. It ends with BMO crash landing in front of Finn and Jake's tree fort. That's the arrival. That's the moment the little machine finally lands where it was always trying to get to. After thousands of years and an ocean of empty space, it comes down right in front of the two people who'd become its family. Read this way, BMO's secret takes the comic relief gadget and turns it into maybe the most quietly devoted character in all of O. Think about it. Here is a being whose entire reason for existing is to keep a family company. That's the function it was given. That's the whole of it. And it didn't give up. It drifted through space for ages, carrying that one purpose until it found the family it was built to find. Everyone else in this show is hiding pain underneath. BMO is hiding devotion. Underneath the gains and the silly voice and the chaos is a thing that was, in the most literal sense imaginable, built to be loved, and that spent thousands of years trying to find someone to love it back. So look at the two of them side by side now. Lady Rainicorn, who can only be truly known by the ones who learn her language, and BMO, a machine constructed for the express purpose of being someone's family. Both of them sit right at the heart of the show's quietest idea, that the things we keep underneath aren't always wounds. Sometimes what's hidden is just the simple aching need to be understood and to belong to somebody. Lady needs you to learn her. BMO needs you to keep it. And the show, in both cases, is asking the same thing it asks everywhere. Will you do the work of actually knowing this person? Or will you stay outside the window? I want to gently hold one more thing up to the light before we move on, because it's the kind of fact that sounds bigger than it is, and I don't want to mislead you. In a future timeline, BMO becomes the king of Oo. The king! The little console that crash landed in the yard ends up ruling the land. And that's a beautiful idea, this small, loving machine outlasting everyone and rising to the top. But I want to be precise. That comes from the future shown in Distant Lands, not from the main series. So it's the kind of future the show offers as a glimpse, a possibility down the road, rather than something that happens in the story we mostly know. Read it as a tender what if. The thing built to be loved eventually becomes the thing that's followed. And that idea of a small hidden thing turning out to be the key to everything is exactly where we're headed next, because there's one secret left underneath all the others, the truth of where the crown really came from, the snail tucked into nearly every frame, and what all of this hiding finally adds up to. But before I let Lady drift on, I want to stay with her a moment longer, because there's a layer under the language layer that I think is even gentler, and it has to do with the voice itself. The woman who speaks for Lady Rainicorn is named Nikki Yang. She was born in Seoul. She is a native Korean speaker, and that is the whole reason her words land the way they do. When you hear Lady, you are not hearing English dialogue run through a filter or faked with an accent. You are hearing an actual Korean speaker talking in her actual first language, warm and unhurried, the real thing. And here is the small, lovely nod of it. Nikki Yang also voices BMO, the same person, the little machine you just heard me get misty about, and the rainbow creature who only speaks Korean are the same voice, the same throat, the same gentle human being on the other side of the microphone. The two softest secrets in the show, the language you have to learn and the robot built to be loved, come out of one person. I didn't know that for years, and when I learned it, the whole corner of the show it lives in seemed to glow a little warmer. And she wasn't only a voice. Nikki Yang worked on the show itself as part of the crew who shaped how it looked and moved. So this is someone who was inside the making of Ooh, drawing it, building it, and also lending it the breath of two of its most tender characters. There's something right about that. The person helping build the world is also the person quietly carrying its kindest secret inside it. Let me sit back for 1 second because I find that almost unbearably sweet, the idea that BMO and Lady share a voice, and then let me go a little deeper into Lady's family, because that's where this gets even richer. Because Lady isn't only Jake's partner and the mother of those 5 kids. She came from somewhere. She has parents, and the show actually brings them on in an early episode, the 12th of the 2nd season, called Her Parents. It first aired in January of 2011, and it's one of those episodes that looks like a simple comedy of nerves and turns out to be carrying something tender underneath, the way this show always does. Lady's mother is named Ethel. Her father is named Bob. And here is the detail I love. They speak Korean too. Of course they do. It runs in the family the way a language runs in any family, passed down, spoken around the dinner table. But unlike Lady, who never bends for the audience, her parents wear little universal translator devices so they can be understood in the wider world. Picture that for a second. The older generation puts on a gadget so the rest of Ooh can follow them. The daughter never bothers. She just keeps speaking herself and lets the ones who love her do the learning. There's a whole quiet idea about belonging tucked into that difference. The parents reaching out, the daughter staying exactly as she is and trusting her family to meet her there. And that little translator device isn't just a throwaway either. It's the same kind of gadget from way back in the very first season, in an episode called My Two Favorite People, which aired in May of 2010. That's the one where Jake fishes a universal translator out of the bottom of a lake so that Finn and Lady can finally talk to each other directly, and the two of them become genuine friends because of it. So the device has history. The show remembered it. It's the rare object in Ooh that exists purely so that people who can't understand each other get to for a little while. And it keeps coming back at exactly the moments when understanding is the whole point. Now, the episode with her parents has one more secret folded into it, and it's the kind of gentle reversal the show does so well. Jake is terrified to meet them. He's convinced Bob and Ethel are going to hate him, because he's a dog. And there's old history between rainicorns and dogs, a whole war between their two kinds somewhere back in the past. So he frets, and he schemes, and he even tries to pass himself off as a rainicorn to win them over, which goes about as well as you'd imagine. And then the truth comes out and it lands like a soft punchline with a warm center. Lady's parents don't hate dogs at all. They adore them because during that war, a dog saved her father's life, saved Bob. And so the very thing Jake was panicking about, the thing he thought would doom him, was secretly the reason he was already welcome. They were never going to reject him for being a dog. A dog was a hero to their family. He spent the whole episode hiding what he was, and what he was exactly the thing that made them love him. I have to just smile at that one, because it's the whole show in miniature, isn't it? The thing you're hiding, terrified it'll be rejected, turns out to be the thing that makes you belong. Jake didn't need the disguise. He never did. So when you stack it all up, Lady's secret stops being only about a language nobody translates, and becomes something bigger and softer than that. It's about a whole family with its own history and its own tongue, living right in the middle of the candy world, completely intact. A mother and a father. A war survived. A language carried down the generations. 5 bilingual kids. A daughter who never once changes herself to be more convenient for the people watching. The show built an entire inner world for this character, and then mostly left it untranslated on purpose, trusting that the warmth would come through even if the words didn't. And it does come through. That's the part that gets me. You can feel exactly how Jake feels about her, exactly how the kids feel, exactly what kind of family this is. And you might not understand a single syllable of it. The love is legible even when the language isn't. And I think that's the craft secret underneath the whole thing. Most cartoons would never dare this. They'd be terrified the audience would tune out the second they hit a sentence they couldn't follow. Adventure Time bet the opposite. It bet that a child half asleep in front of the television could feel the affection in a voice without parsing the meaning. That tone carries further than vocabulary, that you can love a character you don't fully understand. And it was right. Generations of kids grew up adoring a creature whose every line went over their heads, and they never felt shut out, because the warmth was never hidden. Only the words were. That's a kind of faith in the audience you almost never see. The show treated not understanding as something tender rather than something to fix. So that's Lady's Secret in the end, and it really is one of the kind ones. The gentle kind I promised you a little while ago. No tragedy in it anywhere. Just a family speaking its own language in plain hearing year after year, trusting you to feel your way in. A whole life lived softly in the open, hidden only by the fact that most of us never learned to listen closely enough. And that's the thing about all of this. All the hiding we've turned over tonight. The hair and the gum and the language and the longing. Most of these secrets are personal. They belong to a character, to a family, to one lonely heart in the dark. But there is one more secret left, and it isn't personal at all. It's older than any of the people carrying it. It sits under the whole world, under the candy and the cold and the rainbow alike, waiting at the very bottom of everything. And it's where we have to go next. So if you've stayed with me this long, half asleep in the dark, let me give you the oldest secret of all. Older than Simon, older than Marceline, older than the candy and the crown and the little robot drifting through space. And once I've shown it to you, I want to do one last thing. I want to take every hidden thing we've talked about tonight, all of them, the hair and the gum and the language and the longing, and show you that underneath, they were never really different secrets at all. They were one secret wearing a lot of different hats. So let me pull the deepest threads now, the most buried ones, the ones tucked so far down most people watch the whole series and never find them. And let me close the loop on the question we started with. Why do the happiest looking characters in this show carry the saddest things underneath? Start with the crown. We've circled it all night, this gold band with the 3 red jewels that sits on the Ice King's head and runs on cold and ate a good man's mind. We've talked about what it did to Simon, but we never went all the way back. We never asked where the thing actually came from, and the answer is so much stranger and older than you'd ever guess from a sad wizard in a snowy mountain. The crown was forged in the Mesozoic, the age of dinosaurs, not centuries ago, not 1,000 years ago, deep, deep back in a frozen prehistory of this world. Long before anything you'd call human history had started. And it was made by an ice elemental named Urgence Evergreen. Now hold on to that word, elemental, because we've already touched it tonight. Ice is one of the 4. Fire, ice, candy, slime. Evergreen was the ice one back then, the living embodiment of cold, the way bubblegum is the living embodiment of candy now. And Evergreen had a problem. There was an evil catalyst comet bearing down on the world, an incarnation of pure destruction falling out of the sky. The kind of thing that ends everything. And so this ice elemental built a crown. He poured his power into it. He made it as a weapon, a tool, a way to stop the comet and save the world he lived in. That's the origin. The crown that destroyed Simon Petrikov was originally an act of love. It was somebody trying to save everything. I need you to sit with that, because it changes the whole shape of the object. And here's where it gets quietly terrible. Evergreen had an assistant, a little penguinish helper named Gunther. And Gunther, by accident, in the middle of all this, ends up being the very first creature to put the crown on, the first wearer. And the crown does to Gunther what it would do to every soul who ever wore it after. It reaches into him, and it tries to make him into the elemental. It distorts him. It twists this small loyal assistant into a broken, warped version of Evergreen himself. The crown doesn't grant a wish cleanly. It takes whoever wears it and tries to overwrite them with the cold. And what comes out the other side is a cracked mirror of the ice elemental who made it. All of this gets revealed in an episode in the 6th season just called Evergreen. And the moment you know it, the Ice King stops being a punchline and becomes the end of a 1,000-year chain. Because think about the journey this thing took. Trace it hand to hand. It starts with Evergreen in the age of dinosaurs. It distorts Gunther, the first wearer. And then it has to travel. It has to cross more than 1,000 years, through the rise and fall of whole worlds, through the end of one age and the beginning of another, passed along, lost, found, sold, handed off, all the way down to a quiet dock worker in a much later time, an ordinary man who comes across it and brings it home. And from that dock worker it makes its way, eventually into the hands of a gentle, bespectacled scholar named Simon Petrikov. And we know what it did to Simon. We spent time on it tonight. It saved his mind in the worst way, by stealing it, by trading his memory and his name and the woman he loved for a kind of frozen survival. Let me catch myself here for a second, because I always feel the cold settle in when I lay it out like that. A single object, one crown. It runs in a straight, unbroken line from a dinosaur age elemental trying to save the world, through a distorted little assistant, across more than a millennium, through a dock worker's hands, and into the head of the kindest man in the story, and it hollows him out. That's not a prop. That's a spine. Read this way, the crown is the spine of the entire show. It's the single object that carries a curse across 1,000 years and never stops costing people everything. And think about how many of the secrets we've turned over tonight actually hang off that one spine. Marceline, the little girl Simon looked after at the end of the world, the bond between them that breaks your heart, precisely because the crown is slowly taking the only person who stayed kind to her. The Ice King's loneliness up in his frozen mountain, his sad little obsession with capturing princesses, all of it downstream of an object that overwrote the gentleman under me. The four elements, the cosmology where ice sits right beside candy, bubblegum on one corner and the frozen king on the other, two embodiments hollowed out in different ways. Pull on the crown and half the show comes with it. It isn't a side plot. It's a thread that when you tug it, the whole tapestry moves. And it isn't done, because the crown's last debt doesn't get paid by Simon at all. It gets paid by Betty. You remember Betty? Simon's fiancée before the world ended. The woman he loved when he was still just a man. The one whose face he kept losing as the crown ate him from the inside. For most of the show, she's a ghost in his memory. A name he can't quite hold. But Betty comes back into the story alive in her own right, and she gets pulled into the strange machinery of Ooh. And here's the turn. Betty becomes a wizard. She gets her power the way so many things in this show happen, sideways, almost absurdly, by putting on a hat. Magic Man's hat. Another hidden thing, another object you wear that changes what you are, and she puts it on and the magic pours into her. The whole show keeps doing this. The hat, the crown, the thing you place on your own head that rewrites you. Betty joins that lineage too. And in the series finale, in the special called Come Along With Me, Betty makes the choice the whole 1,000-year chain has been building toward. There's a creature in that finale named Golb, and I'm going to name Golb and then be careful, because fans have theorized endlessly about what Bulb truly is, where it comes from, how it ties into the deepest layer of the whole story, and the show leaves almost all of that open on purpose. Nothing official ties it up neatly, so I'll just tell you what it is in the moment. Golb is an entity of chaos, a destroying force, something vast and wrong that threatens to unmake everything. And Simon, by the end, has become human again. The crown is off. He's just a man, finally, vulnerable mortal himself. And Golb is bearing down on him. And Betty, who loved him before any of this started, who got her power from a hat the way he lost his life to a crown, steps in. She sacrifices herself to protect human form Simon from Golb. She gives everything so that the man she loved gets to be a man. I have to just breathe for a second there. Okay. Because look at what that means for the crown. The object was forged by an ice elemental to stop a falling comet, to save a world out of love. And the very last thing it ever does, after 1,000 years of stealing and freezing and hollowing people out, is bring two people to a room at the end of the world, where one of them dies so the other can finally be free of it. The crown's whole arc, read this way, turns the entire series into one long story about what we sacrifice for the people we love. It opens with an elemental sacrificing his power to save everyone. It closes with a woman sacrificing herself to save one man. Same gesture, 1,000 years apart, and the cold band passing between them the whole time. Alright, let me pull back from the cold, because there's another secret I promised you, and it's hiding in a completely different register. It's not tragic at all on its surface. It's the friendliest thing in the entire show. The snail. If you've watched even a handful of episodes, you've seen it, even if you never once noticed you were seeing it. There's a little snail, a small, smiling, cheerful snail, usually tucked somewhere in the background of a scene, often waving one little eye stalk at the camera, at you, like it's saying hello. And here's the thing, it's in almost every episode. Nearly all of them from the first season onward. Hidden in a corner of a frame, behind a character, off at the edge of a crowd, waving. And it's voiced, when it makes its little sounds, by Pendleton Ward, the man who created Adventure Time. He built the show from the very beginning to be a treasure hunt. A thing you freeze frame. A world where the background is never just background, where if you slow down and actually look, there's a tiny friendly creature hidden in plain sight, waiting for you to find it. And I love that as an idea on its own, this gentle little wave tucked into the corners of a cartoon. A secret handshake between the creator and the kind of viewer who pays attention. But the snail has a darker secret, and it's one of my favorite turns in the whole series, because it's so quiet and so mean and so perfect. Because that friendly little snail, the cheerful waving one, once carried the worst evil in all of Ooh, there's a being in this show called the Lich. And the Lich is not sad. The Lich is not lonely. The Lich isn't a good man ruined by an object or a god hollowed out by being alone. The Lich is just evil, pure, ancient, world-ending evil, a thing that wants nothing except the end of all life. And at one point, the Lich was defeated and sealed away, imprisoned in amber, locked up in the Candy Kingdom by a hero, a great warrior named Billy, the closest thing this world has to a legendary champion, the one who beat the Lich and trapped him in that golden resin to keep everything safe. So, there's the Lich, frozen in amber, contained, harmless. Until he isn't. In an episode in the second season called Mortal Folly, the Lich gets out. And the way he gets out is the detail that gives me chills every single time. He escapes his containment by possessing the snail, that little smiling background snail, the cheerful Easter egg that's been waving at you from the corner of nearly every frame since the show began. The creator's own gentle hello. The Lich crawls into it, and suddenly the friendliest gag in Adventure Time is the vessel for its purest evil, eye stalks and all. That same little wave now hiding the thing that wants to end the world. I just think that's such a beautiful, cruel piece of craft. Read this way, the snail is the perfect emblem of how this entire show works. A tiny, friendly thing, hidden in plain sight in almost every frame, that turned out to be carrying the worst evil in the story. Look closely enough at Adventure Time, and the background is never innocent. The thing waving hello might be the thing that ends everything. I do want to be honest with you about one thing, softly, the way I've tried to be all night. That claim that the snail is in every single episode isn't quite airtight. And I don't want to hand you a legend dressed up as a fact. It's in nearly every episode, which is the careful way to say it. There are specific documented exceptions. It's not in the original pilot, it's not in the episode called Food Chain, it's not in the Obsidian Special, and it's not in the Little Frog Seasons shorts. So somebody, somewhere on the crew, was deliberately leaving it out of certain things, choosing where it appeared and where it didn't. And honestly, that makes the whole thing better, not worse, because the careful exclusions are the proof. If the snail were just a lazy recurring doodle, it'd be everywhere by accident. The fact that there are deliberate gaps tells you the hiding was intentional from the very start. Somebody was tending this secret. Somebody decided episode by episode where the little waving thing got to live. Okay, so now I want to do the thing I promised at the top. I want to gather all of it. Because here's what I keep coming back to. Sitting here in the dark with you. Go back through the whole night. A boy in a white hat with a golden mane hidden underneath it that almost no one in Ooh had ever seen. A dog who stretches into anything born out of a strange magical accident that he carries around inside him. A gentle scholar named Simon whose mind and name and memory got buried under a crown of cold. A pink princess who turned out to be a lonely god of candy, building family out of the only thing she's made of because she couldn't bear the silence. A rainbow creature who can only be truly known by the ones who learned her language, while the rest of us stand outside the window. A little machine that drifted through space for thousands of years carrying nothing but the need to be somebody's family. A kiss, held back, withheld, buried under a band t-shirt and a song for years and years before anyone dared to let it out. And here's what I finally understand, laying them all in a row like that. They're the same gesture, every single one. The hat over the hair, the crown over the mind, the candy shell over the loneliness, the foreign language over the love, the robot's silly voice over the longing, the withheld kiss over the truth. It's all one motion, repeated in a dozen disguises. It's the act of keeping something hidden until, at last, somebody finally sees it. Until somebody does the work of looking underneath. The hair gets let down, the crown comes off, and Simon, for a moment, gets to be Simon again. The god of candy admits she's lonely. The family learns the language. The little machine finds the yard it was always falling toward. The kiss, after all those years, finally happens. And once you feel that, you start to see why the show buried these things so deep instead of just telling you. A secret you have to dig for is a secret you've earned. The hair under the hat means more because almost no one in Ooh had ever seen it. Simon's real face means more because the crown kept hiding it. The snail's evil means more because it waved at you 100 times first. The show makes you do the work of looking, the same work it keeps asking its own characters to do for each other, because a thing you find for yourself stays with you in a way a thing you're handed never does. So let me answer the question we started with, the one I asked you at the very beginning. Why do the happiest looking characters carry the saddest secrets? Why is it the cheerful ones, the candy-colored ones, the smiling background snail, who are hiding the heaviest things? The happy surface and the sad secret aren't opposites. They're the same fact seen from two sides. The candy shell exists because of the loneliness underneath it. The silly voice exists to carry the longing. The cheerful wave is exactly where you'd hide the thing you're most afraid of. Adventure Time looks like a sugar-bright cartoon for children. And underneath that surface, all the way down, it's about memory and loss and the slow terror of growing up and watching things end. And its quiet promise, the thing it's whispering under every bright color, is that being finally seen, being truly known by even one person, is worth the fear of being known at all. That's why the hiding is everywhere, because everyone in Ooh is afraid of the same thing and aching for the same thing, which is to take the hat off in front of somebody safe. And that's where it all lands in the end. The series ran 10 seasons and 283 episodes, from 2010 to 2018, and it closed with that 44-minute finale, Come Along With Me. And what does the finale give us? It gives us the kiss, finally and openly, the love that spent years hidden under a song let out into the light at last. It gives us Betty's sacrifice, a woman dying so the man she loved could be a man again. And it gives us the Crown's long curse finally spent, the 1,000-year chain that ran from an ice elemental through a distorted little assistant through a dock worker into Simon, paid off at last. The cold finally lifting off a soul that had carried it far too long. Every hidden thing brought out into the open. Every hat lifted. So rest now, let your eyes stay closed. You found the snail in the corner of the frame tonight, and the hair under the hat, and the man under the crown, and it turned out they were all the same gentle, frightened, hopeful thing. And before I let the quiet take over, there's one last small thing I want to say to you. Not about any character at all, but about why a show like this one matters at 2 in the morning, why we go looking under the hats in the first place, and what it might be trying to tell us about our own. So here we are, back where we started, a boy in a white hat, sitting very still, letting someone he trusts lean in close. The hat comes off, all that hidden gold spills down past his shoulders, and a part of him the world never gets to see is suddenly just there, soft and undefended. That was the first secret. And I told you it was almost a thesis, a quiet promise about everything coming. And I think now you can feel why. Because look at what we found under all the other hats tonight. Finn's hair, hidden on the hero's own head. Jake, grown from a strange bite on his father's head. The most huggable creature in Ooh, arriving by the weirdest road. Simon, a gentle archaeologist emptied out by a crown he put on as a joke, who still found a frightened child in the ashes and gave her a teddy bear so she wouldn't be afraid. A princess made of candy all the way down, building family out of loneliness, and watching it go wrong. A rainbow horse known only by the ones who bother to learn her language. A little machine drifting through space for 1,000 years, built to be someone's family and just trying to land. A kiss 2 people held back from each other for the better part of a decade. A fiancé who gave up everything for the man the crown took. And the crown itself, that long cold curse, its work finally spent. And here is the answer to the question I've been asking since the first minute. Why do the happiest looking characters carry the saddest secrets? Because that was never really a contradiction. Underneath all the candy and color, this was always a show about memory, about loss. About growing up in the ruins of something that ended long before you got here. And underneath even that, it's about the deep, simple relief of finally being seen by someone who stayed. Because every one of those secrets is the same gesture, something hidden, then shown, to someone who didn't leave. A hat lifted for a worried princess. A goodbye written for a child. A song sung across an impossible distance. A shirt kept for years. A crown at last set down. The same small brave act over and over. Here is the thing I hide. I'm showing you. Please stay. So that's the loop closing, the underneath one and the crown one both. The boy took off his hat. The crown's curse ran its course. And what was under all of it, every time, was just a person hoping to be known. Let that be the thought you drift off on. Somebody who looked happy, letting one person see the thing they kept hidden. A good thing to fall asleep to. Thank you for staying up with me through all of this. Truly. It means more than you know that you spent these slow hours here in the quiet, with me and the people of Ooh. If these late, gentle deep dives are the kind of company you like at 2 in the morning, a soft little subscribe keeps them coming. And now, it's okay to let go. You can drift off. The people of Ooh kept their secrets for 1,000 years, and they'll still be here, hats and crowns and all, waiting under the candy whenever you come back. You were seen too, tonight. Sleep well.